On today's Padone My Take, we're going to wrap up the Cleveland Browns season. It's finally here. It's finally time to have that conversation. The Browns are done. We're going to get into that. We are also going to go around the NFL. Championship weekend is here. AFC Championship, NFC Championship games. I can't believe the NFL season is almost over, man. So we're going to get to all that. We're going to get into some Deshaun Watson takes. He wants out of Houston. Who could be in? What should the Texans do? I'm going to give you my takes on all that and all my takes on all the trends around sports. But first, dugout mugs. Ring it in the new year with dugout mugs. I've told you guys about them the last few weeks. The best time to get on board is right now. My guys at Dugout Mugs are ready to make your 2021 a good year, because 2020 was a year that we'll never forget. Treat yourself to start off this new year right with a real baseball bat, hollowed out and turned into the perfect off-season beer mug. You see, I got mine with me on set right here. The Cleveland Indians aren't going to be the Cleveland Indians for much longer. So if you're in Cleveland and you're listening to this, stock up on your Tribe gear with Dugout Mugs today. Support a great small business by visiting dugoutmugs.com/bigplay to view their entire Tribe collection today. That's dugoutmugs.com/bigplay. And like me, you can be in the dugout. Without further ado, let's do it. Alrighty, welcome on in Padone My Take, streaming live on bigplay.com. We also welcome in all of our listeners, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Nick Padone, hanging out with you guys for the next hour or so. We're going to talk Cleveland Browns. We're going to talk NFL. We're going to have a great coming hour here. But it's a tough show, man. It is, because this is not the show that I wanted to do today. You know, we wanted to play the Victory Wednesday music. We wanted to get excited. Browns going to the AFC Championship game. How do you beat the Bills? The Ravens lost over the weekend too. But the season's over. And right when that game ended, you know, and the clock hit 000, it was hard not to be hurt. It was hard not to be disappointed. But my takeaway is that we all need to be, and I think Browns fans have finally circled around to this point, right? Where it's time to be disappointed, not devastated. That's where I am, and I feel like that's where a lot of other people are at this point, just because there's no reason to be devastated. That loss against the Super Bowl champs, against, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs, even without Patrick Mahomes, that's not the kind of stinky loss that stinks up an entire offseason where you fire your coach, you're firing your GM, you're looking for a franchise quarterback. This all has a completely different feel to it, and we're going to get to that in later of the show and why a loss could have possibly been a good thing. And I know you never say, you know, losses are good, especially when it comes to the Browns. You only have 16 stabs at this thing in the regular season, only another 4, you know, if you go all the way in the Super Bowl. So we are going to get to that. But first, as we start off this show tonight, can we just talk about what a ride? You know, what a ride has it been for these Cleveland Browns? Obviously, the heartbreaking loss is what we will remember throughout the offseason. But it was such a fun season because of everything that they had established along the way. Quickly out of the gate, we realized that we had a franchise head coach, at least for the next 5 years. You know, at least for his rookie coach contract, Kevin Stefanski will be on the sideline for the Cleveland Browns. That's refreshing in and of itself. Then the way that the season begins, and Baker Mayfield looks rough to start the year. The Browns are still winning games, but they're doing it on gadget trick plays against the Dallas Cowboys, where Landry's throwing touchdowns to Odell Beckham, and Odell is taking jet sweeps to beat Dallas. And Baker still wasn't there all the way at the beginning of the season. But then to see him flip that switch after the bye week and to turn it on, be a completely different new quarterback, another refreshing thing to take away from the 2020 Cleveland Browns. And then you just look at the front office, the GM. I talked about this on Monday's show on Big Play Reflog on the Big Play Network. The alignment. We're finally seeing that aligned vision in Cleveland, and that everything has come together for our favorite football team, seemingly. It seems like there's no locker room issues this year. There's no, this guy's pitting against this guy. The offensive coordinator is telling the other head coaches on the field before the game that this is going wrong and that that's going wrong. We're finally in like a kumbaya stage with this franchise, and that's kind of exciting, yet it'll be weird. It's going to be a weird offseason. There's not going to be that much news. There's not going to be that many rumors. The Browns are after this, big free agent or this big name via trade. Some of that stuff will always happen organically, especially in an offseason where J.J. Watt could be out, depending on what happens with Deshaun Watson and the Texans. We'll get to some of that later in the show. Von Miller is a defensive end that could be paired with Myles Garrett. He's on an expired contract. We know he has a relationship with Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Myles Garrett. Some of those rumors will happen organically, but what I'm trying to say is it's so nice that sitting here on this Wednesday in the mid-end January, we're not having a conversation about Josh McDaniels' dinner party in Berea with Jimmy Haslam. We're not talking about his wife boarding the flight. Well, if the wife boards the flight, that means the job offer's got to be there, right? It's so refreshing that kind of big news won't be happening. And even after Andrew Berry spoke to the media today, it doesn't seem like really a big, gigantic trade could be in the works, even for the draft. Some people speculated Odell Beckham on his way out, Jarvis Landry on the way out. We're not going to get into any of that tonight. I just don't think it's going to happen. But when I look back at the 2020 Browns, and I want you guys to tweet the show, at Padone My Take, tweet me at Nick Padone 12 at any time, but especially during the show. What was your biggest takeaway? What will be your lasting memory of the 2020 Browns? And to me, it's just to finally see that vision, to finally get over the hurdle, to finally have that fat man that plopped down in front of you at the movie theater get up and leave his seat so you could finally see the screen with a clear view, with 2020 vision. And I'm feeling good about how this season ended, even though it did end on, a little bit of a sour note. It sucks that you lost to Chad Henne. There's no beating around the bush. I couldn't crack this mic before you on this Wednesday night and say otherwise. I couldn't dodge the elephant in the room that the Browns found a way in a fourth quarter where it looked like you were about to get the ball in your quarterback's hands with a chance to win the football game, that you lost to Chad Henne because you gave up a 3rd and 15. However, this loss emphasized the good and the bad of the 2020 Cleveland Browns, and that's why I'm okay with it. We'll keep going with the good. We'll keep going positive. The good news that came out of the loss in Kansas City, Baker's the real deal at this point. You saw him ball out against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You saw him play pretty well against the reigning Super Bowl champions. 23 of 37. There were some drops in there. He had a touchdown, should have had 2 touchdowns. The Jarvis Landry reaching for the pylon thing. We won't get through all that. And an interception. That was his first pick since the one against the Ravens game. His second interception total since Halloween, guys. It was just an incredible stretch of quarterback play from Baker Mayfield. And that interception ended up netting neutral. That didn't hurt the Browns at all. So when you look at Baker's play, that's something that you could take good out of that loss. Your franchise quarterback was the best player on the field during that game. So another takeaway, right? Stefanski's the real deal. The fact that you were in a ball game against the Chiefs, you had to do something right. Even before Mahomes went down, you had to do something right to slow him down. And I know he had the boneheaded challenge where, Tyreek Hill wobbled the ball and caught it up against his leg. But guess what? He owned up to it after the game. That's been a very underrated part to me about Kevin Stefanski's first year as head coach, is he's willing to own up to his mistakes immediately. Remember after Freddie Kitchens tried scoring, it was some goofy scenario where he tried scoring twice within 2 minutes, and instead he settled for like 3 points where it could have been 7, but he was thinking 14 in a completely unlogical situation. And then the reporters were grilling him after the game, like, why would you do that? And Freddie said, I would do it again. And he doubled down on it. Same thing with Hugh Jackson, and I got to watch the tape. Kevin Stefanski, completely different. He owned up to that Tyreek Hill challenge. And he said, I've got to know better than to do that in that situation. So that's the kind of growth that I like to see out of my rookie head coach, especially moving into a second year where he, hopefully in a post-COVID world, could be much more normal. My next good, this offensive line is a real deal when they're healthy. And we've learned the importance of the starters throughout these last few weeks. You know, Joel Bitonio banged up with COVID, misses a few. You know, Jedrick Wills banged up. He leaves the Kansas City Chiefs game after the first snap. Jack Conklin banged up. Wyatt Teller was a beast all season. J.C. Treader in the middle has been unbelievable. This is a very good offensive line in football when it's healthy. So it'll be nice to have those guys get an off season of rest and come back ready to go against a little bit harder of a schedule next year. I would like to see them continue to build on the offensive line this offseason in some facet. Blake Hance, the great story, the kid that, you know, introduced himself to Baker Mayfield before the win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'd expect him to get a camp invite. I'd expect him to be back in Cleveland in some facet. You also get, you know, some of the other COVID opt-out guys back. You get Nick Harris back, who was done for the year after he was put onto the IR with an injury. You get Chris Hubbard back. Some of your horses you get back, but the offensive line, this goes for any team, any organization, any offense, whatever you're trying to do. The offensive line is the one position on the football field where it's never complete. You could always take experimental guys and, you know, stash them and hope that you could develop them and work them up into being truly beasts like we've seen with Wyatt Teller blow up onto the scene this year. I would like to see them continue to work on that offensive front. Let's get into the bad, because the bad isn't all bad, because all of these issues are fixable, right? It's not like years past, how I was saying in the opening of the show, where you have to rip up this loss, you have to gut the roster top to bottom, and we're doing this thing all over again. The bad was good because it showed its face in prime time to the world on national television that the Browns defense blows. And we're not going to do the Joe Woods beef on this program tonight. We're not going to get into Joe Woods stay or go. Is it the scheme? Is it the talent? Listen, it could be a mesh of both. It could be the scheme because he's trying to work with the little talent he has. It could be vice versa. It all starts off for me with 95. Myles Garrett. When he is injured with that oblique injury that he suffered against the Chiefs, dealing with the COVID-19 complications, with hopefully, you know, another offseason of regaining health, getting his lungs back underneath him, just working out, being in that weight room. An injured and COVIDed up Myles Garrett is not the guy that we know. It's not the Myles Garrett that we fell in love with throughout the first 7-8 weeks of this regular season. You need him back. You need him healthy. But you got to help Myles Garrett a little bit. And I was a big Adrian Claiborne proponent, and I still am. I think as a depth piece, even though as a veteran, Adrian Claiborne could provide you a nice spark in situations on a, you know, very limited snap count. Same with Porter Gustin. But when you thrust those guys into bigger roles, in the absence of Olivier Vernon, that's where things got a little bit hairy. And that definitely showed its face. You know, we had a little bit of issues getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes in spots throughout that game. So getting Myles Garrett healthy and getting him some help is what this defense needs to start with. And it's definitely not going to be an easy thing to do. Olivier Vernon is a veteran at this point in his career. He's a free agent coming off a ruptured Achilles. I don't know if that's the guy that's even going to be ready or healthy to be in training camp in Berea to kick this season off. That's the first thing. And then we could talk about, when we're looking at this defense, the linebacker speed. The play where Chad Henne runs 13 and a half yards should have never happened. There should have been some kind of linebacker there that cleans up that play and that puts that mess to bed and that gets the Browns the ball back with a chance to win the football game. And that's where things get a little tricky when we talk about the linebacker. The Browns will be the owner of the 26th overall selection in the upcoming 2021 NFL draft. They do hold their own pick, which is number 26. They also have their second round, few third, fourth round picks. The Browns have a lot of picks, 9 in this upcoming draft. Addressing linebacker speed needs to be something that's done at some point. I know Andrew Berry and analytically driven front offices typically don't value the linebacker position to be a first-round talent. Take that for what it's worth. We saw that last season, that linebacker was a glaring issue after Christian Kirksey left town, after Joe Schobert got a massive payday. We knew that the jig was up and that we were going to need some help with linebacker. Andrew Berry elected not to address that problem until the 4th round, where he took Jacob Phillips out of LSU. Now, I think Jacob Phillips could be your starting middle linebacker, and you'd be okay as long as you address the outside linebacker roles. A guy that could apply pressure, a guy that could just run all over the field in coverage. Some names to look out for in the first round of the draft. We're not going draft heavy tonight, guys. That thing is until April in beautiful downtown Cleveland. Zaven Collins, Nick Bolton, both of those guys should be hovering around in the later end of that draft, or there's some veteran options out there. Levante David from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a player to watch if you're watching the Green Bay Packers and Tampa Bay this weekend duke it out for the NFC Championship. Levante David, I believe he wears number 54. He'll show you a few things out there that would make you like to have him suit up in the brown and orange. He is a little bit up there in age, but for a guy that could just bolt around the field and make tackles, that's what that Browns defense was missing all year. It was so slow. And then the next thing, the only thing that's wrong with the offense outside of the offensive line depth, I already took my soapbox take on that, is some wide receiver depth and some wide receiver speed. To me, there's a very simple, a very foolproof way to address this. The Browns hold their own 3rd round pick. In the 3rd and the 4th round of this year's draft, there's a bunch of speedster wide receivers that will be available. Draft the fastest one. Draft a guy that has blazing 4.3, 4.4 speed. This offense misses a Mecole Hardman. I'm not even asking for Tyreek Hill. I'm just asking for a Mecole Hardman type of speed. Somebody that could really just take a top, blow a top off of a defense, and that makes them respect Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt all the more. If you have a guy that has a limited route tree, that could bolt down the field, run themselves open and let Baker Mayfield find them. Through free agency, if they want to go that route, another veteran that will be out there with 4.4 speed is Marvin Jones, reportedly sourced. There was some interest in the Browns to acquire Marvin Jones ahead of the deadline. They elected not to. Price was a little bit too high for a guy that they figured they could get in a few months. Marvin Jones is a name that I'd look out for, though, coming up here. What we're not going to do tonight, though, is the Jarvis Landry wars that have taken place on the lovely website that is Twitter these last few days. And quickly, to brief anyone that's not constantly on Twitter, that might have just missed it by some situation, there's a group of people out there that believe Jarvis's speed, his skill set, his inability to be a deep threat and beat man coverage is prohibiting the Browns offense from being great. Jarvis is the reason, allegedly, according to these people, that the tight ends aren't producing. He's making a lot of money. He's got the Browns cap strapped. Listen, all of those things are completely false. And you could talk about the culture all you want. You could beat that with a horse. That Jarvis Landry from day one in that "it's contagious, bro" speech that he held in the locker room. We know the kind of leader he is. And trust me when I say this. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, Paul D. Podesta, Callie Brownson, the other nameless people that work in those front offices in Berea, they know that value that Jarvis Landry commands to a room. They know that. They understand the respect that he has against his peers. They understand the Odell Beckham Jr. relationship. Jarvis Landry's not going anywhere, guys. Go listen to what Andrew Berry had to say today. I get that he makes a lot of money. And if that's your complaint, if you want to trade him away, or dare I say release him and take the dead cap hit for 2021, fairly based off cost, I need you guys to just jump off the bandwagon now. Don't be a Browns fan anymore. I have nothing else to say to you. Go enjoy the days of Sashi Brown, Ray Farmer, 1-31, because that's where we were then. We were accumulating, draft picks. In the interim, we were saving a ton of cap space, and that's why the Browns are set up pretty handsomely right now. If the Browns at free agency wanted to go out and sign a Levante David, they could do it, no problem. Even with an adjusted cap space that's coming for the 2021 season due to COVID-19, due to these clubs losing some good cash because of a global pandemic, the Browns are still in a comfortable, semi-comfortable situation. Now, I hear you out. You're not living in, mega million Powerball land, especially after you give Baker Mayfield his deserved payday. It's time to get that done. You have to address the Nick Chubb thing. Say what you want about paying running backs. Nick Chubb's another mouth that needs fed. Denzel Ward was your best defensive player outside of Myles Garrett this season. He's earned a payday as well. You can't go happy-go-lucky with the money. But if you're shedding Jarvis Landry just based off of cost, I have nothing to say to you other than maybe it's time to start looking for another team. Do you want to go be a fan of the New Orleans Saints after Drew Brees retired and they have absolutely no cash? Go do it. Do you want to go be a fan of the New York Jets, the Jacksonville Jaguars? They're going to have to stomach through another rebuild with a rookie quarterback, rookie head coaches. Go do that. Be my guest. You want to go to Houston, where their franchise quarterback wants out, and there's going to be a fire sale of any serviceable pieces that they have in-house. Go do that. Be my guest. He changed the culture, sure, but he has been the best, the most reliable wide receiver on this offense, on this team for the last 3 seasons that he's been there, and you could look even farther than that. He's the best since Josh Gordon's, great, fantastic 1,000 yards accumulated season. Jarvis Landry's that dude. Anybody that wants to get rid of him, you're probably not a real Browns fan. Hate to break it to you. We are going to head to break momentarily. And before we do so, we're going to do another Twitter poll because we've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of success with these things. My question to you is, what is your biggest position of need on the Browns off-season wish list this year? Is it a linebacker? Is it a defensive end? Is it a wide receiver? You could comment if it's something outside of those positions. But what we have up is linebacker, pass rusher, defensive back, or wide receiver. Go vote on Twitter at PadoneMyTake. That's the way to get that done. Go hit up Twitter at PadoneMyTake. Let your voice be heard on what positions you would like to be addressed. You're listening to Padone My Take on BigPlay.com. We read that Twitter poll. We read your tweets to the show. Up next, stay with us. Alrighty, welcome on back in Padone My Take, BigPlay.com. To whoever tweeted the show, whoever hopped out of the live stream, welcome back in. My name is Nick Padone. I'm your host, hanging out with you guys for the next 30 minutes or so. We got to pull up on Twitter. What is your biggest Browns offseason need as we begin to navigate the offseason talks? Comment below your response. We're reading comments on air. We get one in right now from Caleb, who tweets the show that the secondary is actually his biggest offseason need. Caleb's going against the grid of the masses here and saying linebacker is the winning vote with 51%, pass rusher with 15%, defensive back with 33%. And that leaves about 1% short. 1% of people are voting wide receiver. That's out of 135 votes on Twitter at Padone My Take. Join Connor, get in the discussion on Twitter. And we're going to keep navigating this Browns offseason as we move through the show tonight. Man, I just can't believe that the offseason is here. It does bum me out, but it's time to get into the offseason roadmap because what is left for this team to do, first you got to tackle your own guys. And we talked about the things before the break if you're just joining us. You need some linebacker speed, you need some corner depth, you need some wide receiver speed, and you got to help Myles Garrett at defensive end. And you have a bunch of guys on your roster that are capable of doing that. So welcome to the segment called Free Agent, Stay or Go. We go through the list of Cleveland Browns that are currently free agents, and we decide whether it is time for them to stay or whether it is time for them to pack up their bags and go. That's going to be what we do here. So kicking it off with Olivier Vernon. Listen, Vernon was great for the Browns this season, especially in the absence of Myles Garrett while he dealt with COVID-19 and while he was sidelined with symptoms. And then when he came back and when he was dealing with some of those lingering effects before that ruptured Achilles, I'm willing to say Olivier Vernon was an elite pass rusher for the Browns defensively this season. This is so tough for me to do, but I got to say Olivier Vernon, it's time to go. He's an aging football player, an aging defensive end, coming off an injury. He's going to be expecting a lot of money. He was already on a pretty big payday. Olivier Vernon, stay or go. I'm saying it's time to go for OV, and that one pains me to say. Next one, we'll stay with the defensive front. Larry Ogunjobi, stay or go. I think it's time for Larry to go. He spoke with the media as well today. He said he leaves those kind of things up to his agent. He's enjoyed his time in Cleveland. And what I have to say about that is I'm glad he enjoyed it because it's time for number 65 to go. I was a fan of Larry entering this season, last season. I thought he did some great things for the Cleveland Browns defensively. But this year, it just wasn't there. I don't know what happened. And usually it's the opposite. On contract years, usually get guys to ball out. Larry, good luck to you. That's Andrew Billings' job. That's Jordan Elliott's job, the rookie that the Browns drafted in the third round this past year. Larry Ogunjobi, it's time to go. Kendall Lamb, friend of show Kendall Lamb, I say he stays. I think when his name was called upon, he stepped up in big spots to work as a swing tackle. Him and Chris Hubbard combined, I think you got to bring both of those guys back to be your backup offensive tackle. Stay or go, Kendall Lamb. I'm saying it's time for Kendall Lamb to stay. Hopefully they could get him re-signed to a team-friendly deal, get that man to stay in Cleveland. Led the offensive line room in touchdown passes as well. How about that? Terrence Mitchell, cornerback. Another Cleveland Brown that I'm telling to stay. And I was getting frustrated with old Money Mitch at the end of the year. Blown coverages. He was having a hard time sticking to people. Again, getting up there in age. But we've seen how injury prone this corner group can be. We've seen Greedy Williams miss an entire season now with nerve damage in his shoulder. We've seen Denzel Ward be banged up throughout his young Cleveland Browns career. I'm saying Terrence Mitchell needs to stay in Cleveland with the Browns, and I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's just a piece that you need to bring back as a veteran leader on a shorter-term contract for depth because that's the role that he has played so far, and he's done it well. Moving on, Andrew Sendejo. Chris McNeil on Big Play Reflog on Monday joked that he would drive Mr. Sendejo to the airport. Listen, it's time for Sendejo to go. And he had some decent moments in the back half of the season. He really turned it on. And that was never his role to play. He was never supposed to be the starting safety. He was thrown into that role. He played it well at the end. He made you want to punch him in the face at other times. But that job is done. The backup fill-in role should belong to, Sheldrick Redwine for the future. You have Grant Delpit, your youngster who will be having his true rookie season next year, being thrust into that role. And who knows, maybe even an Anthony Harris or so in free agency for that free safety role. Andrew Sendejo, we were way too hard on you. I apologize on the behalf of Browns fans everywhere. Time for you to go. Best of luck in the future. See you later. Taywan Taylor, this is a no-brainer, man. This is the dumbest trade of the Cleveland Browns in the last 3 or 4 years. The fact that they give up a 5th-round pick for a guy that barely even saw the football field. Taywan Taylor, it's time for him to go. I don't know what purpose he served other than devouring a spot on the 53-man. Taywan Taylor, see you later. JoJo Natson, I say he stays. And I think because he's the type of gadget guy that could take the top off of a defense offensively. And then in the kick return game, Mike Prefer has a little bit of a fetish for JoJo Natson for some reason. He's really enamored by the speed that he brings. Donovan Peoples-Jones, while he didn't ever make a giant mistake, he always made me nervous back there returning those kicks. Dearness Johnson was capable when he did it. I think that could be JoJo's job if Prefer decides to go that route. I think he'll have some input on that decision. Rashard Hollywood Higgins. This is an easy one. It should be, at least. You got to keep him. And I know I'm talking about, well, Nick, you just talked about bringing in a speedy receiver. So much two-set, 11 personnel where it's a lot of tight ends, just Odell Beckham Jr., just Jarvis Landry on the field for the Browns at the time. I just think you got to keep Hollywood solely because of that Baker Mayfield connection. If you could do another 1 or 2 years on a cheap budget deal, I think he's shown you enough to stay. Leave that fumble out of it where he dove towards the pylon. Kevin Stefanski gave him all the praise in the world. The kid's a warrior. He's got that connection with Baker. Rashard Higgins has got to stay. With that said, Kaderil Hodge in that receiver room, time for him to go. He stepped up. He made a lot of leaps in his Browns career, albeit just this year after Odell Beckham's injury. Kaderil Hodge, though, just has to go. I think he would find a home on another team. I don't have a whole lot to say about him. On that topic of not a whole lot to say about, Vincent Taylor, wore 96, big defensive tackle that came in at times in relief of Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson. I say Vincent Taylor needs to stay because you could get that deal done easily. He had the batted ball against Kansas City. I think if you could get Vincent Taylor back in here for cheap, he's a younger dude. Keep him. What's that hurt? Some defensive tackle depth is always good, especially good defensive tackle depth, and I do believe that's what he was. BJ Goodson, time for him to go. And I pondered this one. I went back and forth because this season with the Browns, we really have seen the highs and lows of BJ Goodson, who came to Cleveland as a rotational linebacker. We know for Joe Woods, he was the defensive quarterback. He was the play caller, all that good stuff. He was the leader out there. Sure, he did some good things in coverage. He's just so slow. And that's what I keep going back to. If you could get a Zaven Collins, if you could get a Nick Bolton out of Michigan in the draft in the first round, if that's the way the Browns like to go, if you could sign someone in free agency, I think you just have to move on from BJ Goodson if that's the case, because he's so slow. He's kind of one-dimensional. I guess if he agrees to a deal to come back for the cheap and he's not constantly on the field, I'd keep him. But the Browns are young at linebacker. They probably won't let Mack Wilson go just as a cut because that doesn't really make any sense to do so. It makes no money. Same with Sione Takitaki, who's shown you things in the second half of the year, especially against the run. Jacob Phillips, that's Andrew Berry's guy, that was the 4th-round pick. He definitely isn't going anywhere. The Browns are young at linebacker, so if they wanted to keep BJ Goodson as kind of that veteran leader, maybe that's the case. However, if I have to do this segment, I'm saying BJ Goodson, time to get the hell out of here. Malcolm Smith, that's another one that I'm saying go, even though I'm so impressed by him. He was thrust into Browns training camp dead in the middle after COVID protocols, won Super Bowl MVP, was without a job, and then comes into Cleveland and contributes, man. We've heard from on the Big Play Network, Jacob Phillips, Mac Wilson, said that he was the ultimate leader of those young players. Malcolm Smith, thank you so much. Again, another guy that has exceeded expectations for that Browns defense. I just think it's time for that defense to take the next step to try to win an AFC championship and compete for something special in Cleveland. It's time for guys like Malcolm Smith to go. Kevin Johnson, while we're on the subject of kicking everybody out, Kevin Johnson, man, his cleats were stuck in molasses half of the time. The nickel corner that was in there with Denzel Ward, he was the result of a lot of blown coverages. I don't have much to say about him at all. Another miraculous story after he had, his kidney or something punctured in training camp after Harrison Bryant fell on him. Kevin Johnson, time to go. Find a new home. That shouldn't be too hard. Kind of a journeyman nickel at this point. Carl Joseph, strong safety. Stay. I think Carl Joseph needs to stay, man. He was one of the most promising one-year acquisitions on that defensive side of the ball. I hope Carl Joseph finds a way to stay in Cleveland. Obviously, the Browns hope that Ronnie Harrison is the long-term answer at that position. Ronnie's only 23 years old, though, guys. I think there's a lot of growth for him still. He's an Alabama product. There still is a lot harnessed up in there, and I think Carl Joseph could kind of teach him and co-work with him on bringing some of that good out. And Carl Joseph is a younger guy still himself. I think he needs to stay. Let's get into our last free agent. This is unbelievable, actually. Last, free agent worth noting. Cody Parkey. You guys are going to be blown away by this, but I think Cody Parkey needs to stay. I think the Browns need to at least bring him back into training camp this offseason. Obviously get another kicker or two on that training camp roster and just make Parkey compete for it. He was aggravating in that second half of the year. You know that he's probably not the long-term answer, but to bring him back into training camp, I don't see how that hurts anything. The Browns have tried everything. They've tried veteran kickers. They've tried young kickers. None of that stuff is sticking. I think you need to just give Parkey the second chance in camp, hopefully have some preseason games next year, and just see how it goes. I don't think there's any pain in seeing how it goes. I'm keeping Cody Parkey in Cleveland. I know that's a bold take. Tweet me at NickPadone12. Tweet the show at PadoneMyTake. Alrighty, sorry about those technical difficulties there. I was informed by the producers in my headset that are on a little bit of a delay, as we stream this live, that there was no sound in that last segment. We picked the AFC. I picked the Chiefs to come out on top over the Buffalo Bills. Reasoning why: too much firepower on that offense. Gonna be a great game, but I got to go ahead and pick this reigning Super Bowl champs to take a crack at another one. Give me the Chiefs. They've been one of the best teams outside of the Packers. Spoiler alert, in the NFL this year, I got to take the Chiefs to come out of the AFC. If you missed my whole prediction live due to the microphone being shut off, go take a listen on Apple Pods, on Spotify. We go to the NFC. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go ahead and take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What, Nick? You're out of your mind. Aaron Rodgers is playing great football. I have Aaron Rodgers on a loop on TV in the studio right over there. You guys can't see it because when I go to that camera, the sound shuts off on the live feed for some odd reason. I'm being told not to go back to that scene. I think Aaron Rodgers, hands down, eyes closed, hands tied behind my back, is the MVP of this league. 7 days, 24 hours, all day, every day, Rodgers is the MVP. But I can't pick against Tom Brady. He's come into his own ever since the back half of this year, really the last quarter of games of this season. And I know it's a bold prediction. I know I'm picking an underdog in a can't lose scenario to pick against Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau Field in a season that he won the MVP. What Brady has shown me and what that defense in Tampa Bay has shown me is that they have what it takes. They've got enough to get it done. Give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Green Bay Packers in the divisional round, or in the NFC conference round. I can't even say it because it feels so bizarre to say that I'm picking against Aaron Rodgers this season, but I got to do it. I got to go with my heart and my head. I'm picking Tom Brady. That defense is playing inspired football. I think Bruce Arians finally might have dumbed down that offense enough to get Brady going. Brady's long ball looks good, by the way. Chris Godwin, who's a free agent, somebody who's going to overpay for him, he looks pretty good. Mike Evans, I know he's banged up. Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, though the too many weapons in Tampa. Give me the Bucs over Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship. I can't believe that I'm saying that. We got to talk about the situation that's going on in Houston very briefly. I cannot believe that this Deshaun Watson stuff is happening. This is an unprecedented storyline in football, solely based on the fact that no athlete has ever tried to do this. No quarterback has really been able to do this before, where you force your way out of a situation because you disagree with, the GM, the head coach hire. This is a very NBA type of thing that's happening here. And good for Deshaun Watson in a sense, all power to the players type deal. Listen, the Houston Texans, though, and Deshaun Watson, for the betterment of everyone, the Texans and Deshaun Watson need to get this right. Deshaun Watson needs to be the man in Houston. He needs to be in Houston. If you trade him to New York, that's going to be possibly wasting talent. We don't know what Robert Saleh is. We don't know what that staff looks like. We don't know how that is all going to work out. I know they have the number 2 overall pick. I know people around the NFL speak very highly of Robert Saleh. Deshaun Watson, if I'm the Houston Texans, you have a franchise quarterback right in front of you. You need to lock him in a padded room with the ownership, give him boxing gloves if you need, and you need to let them duke it out, figure it out. Is it Eric Bieniemy? Is that the thing that's holding this all apart? If it is, hire Eric Bieniemy. If it doesn't work, you could always fire him. These NFL teams have all the money in the world. It doesn't really matter that much, but if it means losing a generational quarterback, a really solid franchise talent that is Deshaun Watson, who is the second richest quarterback in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes, you're absolutely out of your mind to do something like that. You cannot let this guy walk via trade. You need to sit him down. He's disgruntled Rightfully so. You promised him that he would be involved in the decision-making process that was a new general manager and a new head coach. He is your franchise piece that you gave the keys to the franchise to when you paid him that huge, handsome deal. You need to treat him like it, man. You promised him that you'd be in there. Make good on that promise and let him sit in those meetings. Let him ask some questions and ultimately let him give some input on the decision that takes place. We know that he was disgruntled with the social justice issues and the seriousness or lack thereof that the Texans were taking with some of those issues. Figure that out too, man. Every other organization is doing it. We see it here in Cleveland, how we had the Indians, the Cavs, and the Browns team up to make an alliance of our three major sports teams in Cleveland to combat social justice and education reform and all those things. You have to help Deshaun Watson out. You got to get this figured out for the betterment of the team, for the betterment of the player. Everyone is better if this works. And if it doesn't, Houston, you have my blessings because I don't know what you're doing from there. I don't know where you go. You better hope that you ship him to an NFC suitor. Maybe the Chicago Bears is the target that I look at, because if you send him to an AFC team, dare you send him to the Miami Dolphins for just Tua Tagovailoa and a first-round pick. You are bozos. You're helping Public Enemy 1 in the conference get better with a franchise quarterback that could be around for another 5 to 7 years. Texans, if you do that, the entire National Football League, especially in the entire AFC, will hate you forever. I would send him NFC, but first off, I would make good on this situation. No relationship is ever too bizarre professionally to repair. Money heals all wounds. Time heals all wounds. You figure it out, and you keep Deshaun Watson in a Texans uniform. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys for hanging out. What a fun hour. Sorry that we had some technical difficulties on the Big Play Network this week. I know Big Play Reflog on Monday didn't go off without a hitch. This show, we had a hard time getting it off the ground tonight, and then we had some audio issues there in the back half of the show. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show in any way that you do it. If you listen to me live, beautiful. I appreciate you. Even if you're listening for 30 seconds and turning me off, love you guys all so much. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, that's a great way to listen. But you want to make sure to hit that subscribe button. Never miss an episode. Rate the show 5 stars. It's free to do so. It helps me out a ton, and it makes sure that you're never going to miss an episode. Got some awesome content in the works. We're going to revamp the show in 2021 as we get into February. A ton of new segments. We're going to venture beyond sports. We're going to have a ton of fun. Huge thanks to my guys at Dugout Mugs. If you talk about support, go support a great, small, locally owned business down there in Florida. They've got Ohio connections all over the company. Support them. Dugoutmugs.com/bigplay. It'll hyperlink you right to their Indians collection. Get a nice tri-bat mug like the one that I keep on me all times on hand in the Big Play studio. Dave doesn't like when I spill stuff everywhere, so I didn't have anything in it tonight. Shout out to Where I'm From. They usually hook it up with the merch. I got a Buckeyes shirt on tonight. WhereI'mFrom.com. Always great stuff there. Next Wednesday night, same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to do this all over again. Go live your life. Go have some fun. Do so safely. This pandemic is almost over. We're getting through it together. You guys know all the cliches. At the end of the day, I love you so much. Follow me on Twitter at NickPadone12. Here for you guys if you need anything. Goodbye.